Hello and welcome back to Spoiler Season, where I'm going to be talking about massive buffs to the new lightning skills, which were very badly needed. I will also be talking about two unique items, one of which is completely new, and one of which is kind of just an old unique item with a somewhat sus coat of paint. So first off, the gloves that nobody really asked for, but are definitely not Hateforge, Kaom's Spirit. Kaom's Spirit is a really cool concept. A way to generate rage that doesn't require being a berserker, doesn't require being an attack build, and doesn't require using Chainbreaker. And on that note, I have heard them called the better Chainbreaker, but I don't think that's a great comparison. To me, Chainbreaker and Kaom's Spirit are kind of like Life Tap and Inspiration. In some builds they will serve the same purpose, but a lot of the time you won't be using them for the same reason. So just like how typically, you'll use Inspiration when you can get the mana low enough to trivialize it with that, and you want the extra crit and damage, you'll use Kaom's Spirit when you specifically want Rage Gen. Whereas, you'll use Chainbreaker when you want to in some way leverage the cost of skills aspect. Before now, Chainbreaker just got used for both because we didn't really have that many alternatives. And so if you're just looking at it from a Rage Gen perspective, I guess yes, Kaom's Spirit are a slightly better Chainbreaker. It should be noted though that they don't come without a downside. And that downside is that life recovery from regeneration is not applied. Instead, you regenerate 1 rage per second for every 100 life regenerated per second from regeneration. It's also got a bit of fire res, some fizz attack leech, and a bit of life. Don't worry, despite it being a Kaom item, it does have 4 sockets, which is something that was discussed, and the idea of it having 0 sockets was too big of a downside. So if you have a Vitality on, and you have a couple of life regen rolls on gear, you can easily get 500 to 600 life regenerated per second these days. If so, that would give you 5 to 6 rage per second. This will mean you'll sit pretty much at full rage if you're playing a Rage Vortex build. Which means it's going to be way easier to play Rage Vortex on non-Berserker Ascendancies. It also means that your Berserk uptime will be a lot better because this is a potent rage generation source. As a note, I've heard some people say this means you'll have 100% uptime. Unfortunately, no. Berserk's cooldown does not recover during its effect, so you'll never have 100% uptime. But this is definitely a way to get more uptime and have your Berserk last longer. In fact, if you don't need mana and you don't need life regen, I think you could actually use this with Chainbreaker, though I haven't checked for sure, so don't quote me on that. Regardless, there's going to be some interesting uses for Kaom's Spirit in the near future. Unless everyone just uses Hateforge instead. We'll have to see how that settles out. Next up, I wanted to talk about the new lightning skills. Specifically, Galvanic Field, Lightning Conduit, and Overcharge support. These skills were kind of deservedly getting memed on. A lot of people were theory crafting with them, and even I tried to. But the more I dove into it, the more I realized they're just not that good. Or at least, they weren't that good before. They've now been given about a 30% buff across the board. I'm not 100% sure this saves Galvanic Field. You still can't modify its tick rate. However, at firing a beam every 0.1 seconds, it does tick pretty quickly, and now with the higher damage, it should at least be usable, even if it's relegated to a support skill more than your main damage. On the other hand, Lightning Conduit now has massive damage. Not only was the base damage bumped, but instead of gaining 10% more damage with hits per 5% shock effect on enemy, it is now 15% more. Which means you can get 295% more damage built into the gem with a 65% shock. And I think between just hitting reasonably hard, maybe using overcharge support on a support skill like Stormbrand, and grabbing the shock mastery, probably as an elementalist, a full 65% shock should be pretty achievable. Does this mean they're the best skills ever added to Path of Exile? Well, probably not. Does this mean they're good enough to potentially upset my league start choice and bait me into playing them? I'll get back to you on that one on Friday. But there's definitely a lot more to explore now that is pretty interesting. Now, if you found this helpful so far, or maybe you want to find out if I'm actually going to be playing a Storm Conduit build come League Start Friday, then get subscribed. Be sure to leave a like and share it with your friends. And a special thanks to my patrons and channel members for the continued support, helping to make videos just like this one. For now though, there's one more item that I wanted to talk about, and this is the first unique change that I'm really not happy about. That is the Poised Prism, which seems to be a remade version of Hyri's Demise. The problem is, in almost every way, it feels like a downgrade. Hyri's Demise was a fated unique item, which of course is not going to exist in Path of Exile 319. It gave some AoE, attributes, attack speed, and damage per dex, int, and strength, which meant it was a very interesting quiver to use on any stat stacking bow build. Now, it's being replaced by the Poised Prism. The Poised Prism loses the life gain on hit and the life gain on hit base for increased elemental damage of attack skills. This, in and of itself, isn't too bad of a change. However, it also loses up to 30 all attributes, it loses attack speed, and it loses AoE, in favor of what looks like 15 to 25% to all elemental resistances with 3 individual rolls. It does keep the 1 to 2 cold, 1 to 2 fire, and 0 to 3 lightning, but I can't help but feel like this is a strict downgrade. If you're stat stacking, you'll probably use it anyway. However, I found the old version to be much more interesting. Not only did it give you attributes, which of course helped scale the damage if you were stat stacking, but the attack speed felt really nice, and AoE on a quiver was a relatively rare and difficult to obtain stat, so I especially appreciated the fact that Hyri's Demise had it, and that's the part that I'm saddest to see go. I always like it when unique items fill a niche. Does the Poised Prism fill the stat stacking quiver niche? Well, yes. It's just a little bit less interesting. So in this case, I do feel like the item was a downgrade, and I can't help but be a bit disappointed. But that said, most of the other unique changes are absolutely spectacular, so don't let this one get you down too much. I am curious though, are you going to be league starting a lightning build, and do you have any uses for Kaom Spirit? Let me know some of your thoughts down in the comments below. A special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members. Your support helps keep me independent and allows me to turn down things like sketchy mobile game sponsorships. You can do so for as low as $1 a month over on Patreon, or if you want to support me completely for free, then you can join the community by hopping into my Discord, link below. If you want more content, check out my second channel, 10 Gaming Thoughts. It's a place that I use to review games, ramble my way through video essays, and a lot more. Or of course, you can just click the suggested video in the card right now. I hope you learned something today, and maybe I'll see you again sometime soon.